Hey everybody, this is Josh McKinney, and I just want to welcome you to episode 160 of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. So today we're going to talk about, really, this is something that I have always struggled with, and I think I've been doing better at it than I ever have, and so thought we could do an episode on it. And I named the episode "Why Consistency Feels Impossible," and that is it's because that's really how it felt for me for a long time, is just this repetitive battle. The only thing that was consistent is that I struggled with consistency, right? And just a few things that were helpful for me that have helped me be better about being more consistent and not dealing with the highs and lows as much. And so, and you could probably apply this to things that aren't jujitsu. You can definitely apply this to things that aren't jujitsu because some of the examples that I give are not jujitsu. We talk about business and coaching and all kinds of other things, podcasting and social media, all kinds of other things, as per usual on the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. Also, towards the end of the episode, I give just a little bit of a spoiler to what happened last weekend at the Strange Hands main event between Josh McKinney and Cody Kellison. And so you guys will hopefully enjoy that too. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump right into this episode. Jiu-Jitsu consistency in general is very hard, at least for a lot of us. Maybe there are people that are going to listen to this episode and don't struggle being consistent with whatever goal they have, whatever job they have, with whatever jujitsu goals that they have. But I think for a lot of us, one of the hardest battles is not the motivation to get started. Even it's not the desire. It's not even the planning. Most of us struggle just consistently week in and week out, doing whatever we need to get to our big goals, or to do the things that we want to do, or most importantly, to become the people that we want to become. And so I just had three main thoughts on why consistency feels impossible, and then kind of some thoughts on how to make it feel less impossible. And so I think the first thought on why consistency feels impossible is motion. Uh, we'll just look at this analogy. If we think of a car, and there are two cars actually, one is going 60 miles an hour and the other one is stopped completely. It is much easier for the car that's going 60 miles an hour to just continue going 60 miles an hour than it is for the car that is stopped. It is way more energy. It is way more force. It is way more movement is to try to get the car that is not moving to move, right? We are the exact same way. It is way easier for me to adopt a brand new training schedule if I'm already training a lot. And I go, okay, well, I have that motion going. I am continuing to be able to go and to be able to feel good every single day. So if I just tweak my training schedule, well, I'm used to training. And so it's not a big deal. Now, if you are laying on the couch and you go and approach that exact same training schedule, you haven't trained in 6 months, most likely all that's going to happen is you are going to get discouraged. You're going to try to get the ball rolling, get the car moving, try to whip yourself into shape, whatever term you want to use. And then you're going to go, wow, it took so much effort just to take that first step. The cool thing about taking steps, though, is yes, it always takes a lot of effort for that first step, and even for the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth. But as you keep moving, and you can go test this in your backyard. As you keep walking, you continue to be able to take steps. You create momentum, and you're able to keep going. And so we're just going to look first at some thoughts on getting those first steps. And I think the reason that we're looking at it like this is because they are the most important. It is impossible to be consistent without starting somewhere. And so I think one of the simplest things that you can do if this resonates, we're talking about, okay, I just can't get going. I want to be a competitor, but I struggle to make class more than once every 2 weeks. I can't get going. The first thing that you can do is have someone take the first few steps with you. And this could be like a buddy that you are inviting to the gym to train with you and to kind of get the ball rolling. Or instead of being just a buddy, this could be the coach at the gym that you train at, or the coach at the gym that you're wanting to train at when you first go in. A lot of times, just because it's part of my job, I will help someone brand new in the gym take their first few steps. And once they get those first few steps, I can kind of let them go. I can let them keep walking in the direction that they are. And, we're in a good environment and they're going to continue to get built up and grow from that. But without those first few steps, really without someone holding your hand, a lot of times it is really, really hard to get going. And so, how I like to look at that, if I'm looking for someone to help me, one, I would always first look at, hey, has somebody helped me before? A lot of times people that help you, they do it because they want to. They do it because whatever, the feeling that they get from it, or they're trying to become a better coach or a better leader or a better friend. And so they can help you take these steps. And that's why this purple belt spent 20 minutes after class helping you out, is because he wants to feel needed too. And he wants to start learning to teach too. And he wants to grow too. And so sometimes you just stumble on these kind of inside the school student teacher relationships that aren't with the head coach, that are with a blue belt or a purple belt. We had Claudia Duval on the show a long time ago. I think it was probably in the first 25 episodes. And her biggest jujitsu advice that she gave was that you should adopt a white belt. If you're an upper belt, you should adopt the white belt. And the reason for that is because, one, that's going to be one of your training partners one day. Two, you don't want to be a jerk. You want to be someone who was probably helpful for you when you first started. And so it's just kind of the circle of life in jiu-jitsu. But then also, you adopt the white belt because being a white belt is really hard. Pretty much all of white belt is learning to be consistent, learn the names of some positions, kind of learn the basic fights of those positions. But you're starting from zero a lot of the time. Obviously, if you've wrestled, if you've grappled you're not starting from zero. But for most of us, when we first walk into the door, we've never really grappled. We really don't know anything about jiu-jitsu, and you're taking somebody that is brand new at the very beginning of their jiu-jitsu and then saying, okay, now what you need to do is you need to train 3 times a week, and you need to make sure you're training in the right positions. You make sure you're spending your time wisely. Let's get your diet going. All those things, they're all these big things. So instead, it's better to start with a simple goal. It's better to start with something accomplishable, and that is your first, in quotes, step when it comes to finding consistency. And so just a little more thought on this, on the idea of motion, making consistency feeling so hard and taking those first few steps. Yes, we always talk about on the podcast that you begin with the end in mind. But if you only think about the end, we don't talk about this, but if you only think about the end, sometimes you get really discouraged. Sometimes you go, man, I want to be a black belt, and you're on day 1 of your jiu-jitsu. Well, how would you be a black belt? I always like to reference this quote. Chewy always says it. It is, how do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time. And Getting your black belt is the same way. You take one step at a time. If you don't train at head nod and your school does stripes, you do it one stripe at a time. If you do train at my school head nod, then you do it one belt at a time. And most likely I won't promote you. But that's a different conversation for a different day. But those first steps should lead you to an easy goal, something that you can smile about, something that you can, something we've been doing. I'll probably talk about this at some point, but we've been doing just a different sales thing for our gym because those first steps are really hard to take. And so it's kind of a new, a model of being able to get somebody brand new through the door and help them take those first few steps. And one, it's been a lot, but two, they have you do these things when you're doing sales. This actually, the company that we're using doesn't have us specifically do this, but I've done these type of things before. And I remember one company always would talk about every time you get a sale, you should ring the bell. And ring the bell could be anything, right? You get a sale. I don't know if it's me, you make yourself a cup of coffee, right? Your 30th of the day. You just do something positive for yourself, something exciting. I remember I used to struggle with focus when it came to reading and stuff. That's why the same we always talk about like the same strength. Your greatest strength is often your greatest weakness. When it comes to the podcast, the fact that I can talk about 100 different things on an episode is really good for a lot of the listeners, right? They're like, this is cool because I'm able to pick out what I like. When I was in school, my mind working in that way was not very helpful. It was not very good. So something that one of my teachers would do for me is I would struggle to read what we were supposed to read and stay on topic. I would read a paragraph and then I would be in outer space somewhere, and so what they would do is they would put like jelly beans at certain parts of the page. And so I would read to that jelly bean and then I would eat a jelly bean. I would, in quotes, ring the bell. And I would go, oh, well, I got some positivity out of reading those 3 or 4 paragraphs. I can now focus on my next step, which is reading the next 3 paragraphs. And yes, this is something that my teacher did because I probably had undiagnosed ADHD as a kid. But you can do this with your jiu-jitsu. You can set rewards for yourself, set goals, set easy steps, but also be a little bit nice to yourself and say, hey, you used to be a fat slob. And yeah, you're still a fat slob, but you're a fat slob that made a single jiu-jitsu class every single week for an entire month. That's huge. You didn't do that the month before. That is a big step. You should reward yourself, probably not with jelly beans, but you should reward yourself with something. You should do something that you're excited about, do something that is good, and put that in your mind that, hey, this, though it was only one step, I would not be able to take step number 2, which is make 2 classes a week. I would not be able to take step number 2 unless I had completed step number 1. And maybe I would have tried. And that's going to be our next point. Our first reason is why consistency feels impossible was motion. The second reason for why consistency feels impossible is hey guys, just wanted to give you a quick update on something ridiculous that we are doing at simplifyingjiujitsu.com. So right now at Simplifying Jiu-Jitsu, this is where I put all of my instructionals on, plus my dad's instructionals. Kyle Watson has some instructionals on, a few other people that you would really like to learn from. But for right now, until Black Friday, I guess until the day after Black Friday, everything is 40% off with the promo code BLACK. Everything on the entire marketplace of simplifyingjiujitsu.com. The only way to do that is by using the promo code BLACK, BLACK, at checkout. And again, this lasts until, I don't know, what's Saturday after Black Friday? Like Black Saturday? This lasts until Black Saturday. And the Saturday after Thanksgiving. You guys know when I'm talking about. You know when it lasts till. But again, the promo code is BLACK and the website is simplifyingjujitsu.com. Let's get back to the episode. Next point, our first reason is why consistency feels impossible was motion. The second reason for why consistency feels impossible is emotion. I know I really pronounced the E in emotion, but it was because, hey, those two worked together really well. The third point doesn't work with motion or emotion, but whatever. But I think we've all dealt with this. We have this idea and we go, I can accomplish this. I can do this. And we're in the right frame of mind. And maybe even we get it going. Maybe it's a big weight loss goal. Maybe it's a big jiu-jitsu competition. Maybe it's just something at our job that is really important. And we say, I can accomplish this. And what you start to do is you go, okay, today I'm going to spend 8 hours accomplishing this. And you do. And then the next day you spend 8 hours, and the next day you spend 8 hours, and you're starting to really just obsess over whatever you're trying to accomplish. And then you get sick. Then you're struggling to sleep. You're getting less sleep. You're not as functional. Or then you get injured on the mat. Something happens, and your next response, generally for most of us, is to crash, is to go, man, I thought I had it, and now I'm not even close to my goal. I suck just like everything else. I've failed my whole life. I've always been a failure, right? And we play this game with ourselves. And keep in mind, I'll tell you guys what some of my mental thoughts feel like, and my mental negative thoughts feel, because we all deal with these. We all deal with that voice that says, hey, remember when you used to not be able to do this? Well, I still don't think you can. Do you remember when you used to be a fat slob? Well, I still think you are. We all deal with these fights. We all deal with these mental battles. I'm kind of, at this point, I have three main business focuses. Three main, they're not business, just three main focuses that don't have to do with my marriage or my home life. But just kind of three outside of my home life focuses. And obviously one is the podcast. The second is my gym. And then the third is competing. And so all three of these things, I am going up against people who only focus on one of these things. When I'm going to compete, pretty much everybody I'm an adult that I'm competing against, pretty much all of them train jiu-jitsu full-time. Or maybe they run a school and they train jiu-jitsu. Maybe. Then maybe they have a YouTube channel and they train jiu-jitsu. Maybe. But most of the people, 90% probably, of the people that I am competing against, they're athletes. That's their job. They are jiu-jitsu competitors. That is their job. When I go to coach at a tournament, most of the guys that I'm coaching with at the higher levels, they are coaches. They're not athletes. That's their job. When you look at the top podcasts in jiu-jitsu, the ones that I'm trying to compete against, guess what these guys do full time? They podcast. So these three main goals of my life, I am having to split time. The only way that I have a chance of accomplishing anything in these three places is through consistency. A lot of people are listening to the podcast now and they don't realize that this is why, but they discovered the podcast this year. I've had a podcast for like 3 years. but you didn't discover it until this year. I don't think it's a coincidence that this was the first year that I decided I would post every single Thursday. And we are on November 10th, and I've still posted every single Thursday. And so that consistency has produced new listeners, you, right? Possibly you. But without that consistency, with me going, you know what? I'm going to post 20 episodes in the next 20 weeks, and then I'm going to take 8 weeks off and just not do anything with the podcast. That's really what I was doing for a long time. Or with the gym, I was taking, okay, we are going to advertise for a period of time, get to a certain number of students, and then we're going to take a break on advertising. And for a long time for the gym, that was really helpful. Then as a competitor, same thing. I want to be a good competitor. Okay, I'm going to spend these 3 months focusing on being a good competitor. Well, then after these 3 months, man, I've got to focus on the gym again. We got to run ads again. We're starting to lose students, right? So here's how we deal with this. And like I said, I told you guys I would talk about kind of the mental battles that I hear in my head, and when I'm dealing with these things and I'm trying to run these things and I am competing, this is when I hear the worst, the most negative thoughts for me. I'm not usually releasing a podcast and being like, oh man, Josh, you suck at podcasting. That's not true. Every once in a while, I think that. But as a competitor, you go and you fight somebody tough. It's been funny. Me and some of my students were talking about it. Every match that I have had, minus maybe 4 in the last 2 years, maybe 5 in the last 2 years, we have pretty much said before the match, wow, Josh, if you beat this guy, this is the biggest win of your career, which is bonkers. That is, I was competing a lot, but the level of competitor that I was fighting was so high. And I also, I'm also fighting probably the same 3 guys over and over again at these tournaments. And they are 3 of the best guys in the weight class that I'm competing. And, it's just kind of been like that. They say it be like that sometimes. It does be like that sometimes. And what would happen is I would compete and I would lose. And my mind would say, maybe you just don't have it, dude. Maybe physically you just can't compete with these guys. Maybe, I don't think I ever made the time excuse, but usually physically, that is the thing that I notice. Oh my gosh, my body is beat down. And it just doesn't seem like these guys' bodies are. It seems like these guys can compete all day, and then they're as fresh as a daisy for the open class. Now, maybe some of them are on some special products, but probably not in jiu-jitsu. But the big thing was my own mental battle. I had to decide, okay, I'm not going to let that be anymore. I'm not going to leave this tournament and say, hey, the reason that you lost is because you're not able to compete with these guys physically, because I don't think that at the time I was doing the things that I needed to be at the peak physicality for me without being on steroids. I think that I was probably going, you know what? I'm not on steroids and these guys are. And so using that as almost an excuse, right? To say, I shouldn't be focused on lifting. I shouldn't be consistent with my lifts and my cardio outside of the mats. But I decided I needed to. I decided, hey, that's an excuse. That's me being emotional, being in my own feelings and saying, oh, woe is me. Things aren't fair. The world isn't fair. People are doing drugs to win matches, and I don't want to do that. At some point, you kind of got to tell yourself, hey, the world isn't fair. What can I do to overcome that? And for me, my big thing was consistency. It was, I need to build a routine to be able to get my lifts in so I can stay as close to these guys physically as I can to get my cardio in. So when the match is down to the end, that I can keep fighting. What started to happen though is I started to find all of these, we kind of talked about it in the beginning, just having a little bit of a mentor. I started to find more mentors, people that have always been my mentors, but they started to notice my consistency and they started to say, hey, there's something going on here. Josh might need help. But when I was sitting on the couch and not being consistent, they didn't even ask themselves that, right? I wasn't showing what I needed to do. I wasn't showing the consistency that would motivate them. I was talking to um, I mean, yeah, he's under Kyle, but it's also one of my guys too. Court. He is runs Alton Family Martial Arts in Alton. And so we were just talking about kind of having students that are motivated. And he goes, yeah, man, I wish I had the motivation that this guy has. And it was one of his students. He's like, he's just so excited. He's just so pumped up. And I go, yeah, I felt that for a long time when I was traveling to compete with all of my students, and they were just so motivated. I was like, man, I wish I had their motivation. And then I started to realize, man, I used to have their motivation. They've got this blue belt mentality that I've kind of lost, and it's kind of becoming contagious just by surrounding myself with people that were being consistent because they were motivated, even though they were my students. It started to motivate me again. It started to force me into some consistency. And I think that's all I need to say about emotion. Obviously, I didn't say this, but probably should mention this. Also, if you're somebody who struggles with the emotion side of this more than others on the mat, you know what I mean? This time of year, even for a lot of people, this is a time that emotion tends to be worse, at least in America, right? When winter starts coming, when the holidays start coming, the sun stops coming out as much. We're not outside as much. You're not getting vitamin D. You're not getting your serotonin. What starts to happen is for people that fall into depression, for people that struggle with anxiety, usually a lot of times this is the worst time. And I know those aren't emotions. Those are different. But on that same note, you also could have mentors. You also could have people that help you. You could have a therapist that helps you. You could have a coach also that helps you. You don't want to generally you want to go to a therapist first, right? Somebody who is a professional first, somebody you can trust, and somebody who's not too close to the picture, right? Sometimes you go to people for guidance and they just know you too much, right? They know you too well. And so, if you're noticing the emotion point struck some strings, but we didn't touch on things on mental health, find people that will help you, right? Most people from your gym really support you and have your back way more than you even realize. And in these mental health battles that a lot of people deal with, more and more people are dealing with now, it seems, than ever before. If you reach out, almost always, I mean, I don't know any time that I've heard of it not going this way. If you reach out, you have somebody out there that wants the best for you. You have somebody out there that will do what they can to help you. And they will help you stay consistent with your mental health. A lot of times, the big things that is recommended to people that struggle with mental health is you create a routine. Hey, you get up at 9 a.m. Even if you don't have to, you get up at 8 a.m. or at 7 a.m. You take your walk in the morning, even if it's cold, even if it's snowing, even if it's you dress for it and you take your walk. You do what is on your routine. And that consistency a lot of times can help you out of this mental battle or help you through the mental battle. I always try to not talk too much about those things because obviously I am not an expert on them. But I don't think that the advice of find an expert is ever going to be bad. And so now we'll talk about the third reason is why consistency feels impossible. Hey guys, really quick, I want to interrupt this podcast to let you know that I know if you have not given me a 5-star review. I've been trying to get you to give me this 5-star review and you still haven't done it. Unless you have. If you have, then I'm not yelling at you. Yell with me at the people that haven't. But yeah, and then, like I said, even if you have, get a second phone, get a third phone, give me another 5-star review. I don't know. Steal your grandma's phone, get on Spotify, get her to give me a 5-star review. Dude, I'm dying for these 5-star reviews. Help me out here. Let's get back to the episode. About the third reason is why consistency feels impossible. And it's that you're changing and you have to adjust. So often we're looking for, you have an episode called like the perfect training schedule or perfecting your training schedule or something like that. And it got a ton of listens. A lot of people go, yeah, I would love that. But the problem is the perfect training schedule for me is not always going to be the perfect training schedule for you. And more importantly, the perfect training schedule for me isn't even the perfect training schedule for me 5 years ago. I am a different person. I have different goals. A lot of my goals are the same, but I do have different goals. I have different motivations for sure. Different, like different reasons to be successful or to want to be successful. But one thing that I always notice is people will struggle with understanding that they change and that other people change. I struggle with that too. This is like, there's this thing. So my students will get on me and they'll be like, man, this guy that you are pretty nice to, he's kind of a tool or something, right? They'll say something along those lines. They'll probably use a much meaner word. My students are brutal, and they'll say, why do you even associate with this guy? Why do you want anything to do with him? And a lot of times my answer is this: he didn't used to be like that. He didn't used to be like that. He didn't used to, or she didn't used to be like that. There was a change. There was something that happened. And a lot of the times when we're talking about people that I've come up with that are probably now jujitsu coaches, that are whatever, jujitsu influencers, that are whatever, a lot of times they let those things go to their head. A lot of times, this is like we kind of talked about the first few steps with motion. And then we talked about creating a lot of consistency, creating a kind of a routine, a schedule with in dealing with emotion while you're doing this. But now let's talk about once you do have the ball rolling, once you are 11 months in on your podcast and you're consistently posting every single week, and all of a sudden people are sending you emails and people are coming up to you at jiu-jitsu tournaments. And this is what's happening to me. And obviously, my mind, my ego literally just wants to say, oh my gosh, finally, people know that I'm special. How bizarre, how arrogant, right? Finally, people notice me. What am I, 14 and in high school? Why is that where my mind wants to go? I see why. There are these guys that when I came up, I just had I would have this huge respect for them. And then as life happened, my respect started to dwindle. I started to say, man, this guy isn't who I thought he was. But maybe he was. Maybe he just changed. Maybe he let it go to his head. And so many people do this. And it's hard not to. Look, if I ever start to come off like like some people come off on social media, a lot of people come off on social media. To me, the arrogant black belt. If I ever come off like that, send me an email or walk up to me at a tournament and punch me in the face. Okay? Because most of these guys, they start to just believe their own hype. They start to believe, oh, I am relevant. And there's nothing wrong with believing that in and believing in yourself. It's just when you start to say, I am special. I am better. Because if I'm special, that means other people are not. If I'm better, that means other people are not. And when I start to make myself more important than other people in my own head, and a lot of times it's because the environment allows you to do this. We know coaches that I'm talking about. We know coaches that are doing shady stuff, but they keep their circle nice and small. They surround themselves with a bunch of yes men and yes women, and it's no big deal, right? They create their own environment and it's not a big deal. That starts as soon as they start to say, because I'm a black belt and people are excited that I'm teaching them jujitsu, I am better than these people. And then you start to treat people like you are better than them. You stop looking at people like, oh, this brand new white belt, I could take advantage of this person because they're irrelevant to me. I am, a lot of these guys, they look at themselves like they are a god. I know it was kind of a rant that had nothing to do with it. It does. People change. We've got to recognize this in ourselves. We've got to look ahead, right? Talk so much about beginning with the end in mind. Something that you will know when you do that is you can start to see pitfalls. Because for me, I go, okay, I really want this podcast to be successful. And make no mistake, I only want this podcast to be successful so me and my wife can travel and do more together. I really don't care about being a jiu-jitsu influencer. It really feels weird to me the times that I'm treated that way. But what we do, or what I have been trying to do more even, is look ahead. You look at people that you say, hey, this guy, maybe obviously he doesn't have a podcast called the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu Show, so there is difference between the two of us. But maybe this person is at a place in his or her life that I want to get to. And, obviously I can break down how they got there, but I can also look at the pitfalls that they dealt with. Sometimes the pitfall that they dealt with is that black belt arrogant pitfall that we were just talking about. Sometimes the pitfall that they dealt with was just this thing that changed everything for them. And if you just get to ask them about it, they'll say, hey, yeah, there was this thing and I struggled with it for years, but you don't have to. You can just know because, at a reference to the beginning, or the middle, I guess, you had the right mentor. You found somebody who was a good mentor and you relied on him. You trusted him and you were able to grow from it. Yeah. Speaking of people treating me weird though, I'll give you guys a really quick match recap of what happened this week. And I've announced it the last few weeks that I was going to get to be on the Strange Hands, jiu-jitsu event. What this is Strange Donuts is a St. Louis donut shop, and there's a few of them, and they have strange donuts. And then there is a brewery called Four Hands Brewery, and they have a kind of like this cool upstairs area that is basically empty, and it's only got a bar in it. And what the Strange Hands event was putting mats down in that area, and it was actually a free event unless you were VIP sitting along the mat side. But what happened during this event is there were 11 submission only matches, and it was, for me, one of the coolest experiences that I've ever had competing. And it was just because the event was different. We talked about, I was talking to Adam Meredith, who runs Imposed Will, and he's Imposed Will is who actually put the event on. But we were just talking about what made this different, because everyone was agreeing it feels different. A lot of the competitors were coming off the mat and like, I've never done anything like that before. That was bizarre. But they were really, and I really think that part of it had to do with just it being a free event. But the fact that a lot of people there, or some of the people there, didn't seem to know jujitsu, and they didn't seem to even be like family members or anything like that. It just seemed like people downtown St. Louis looking for art. And they were like, oh, there's an art show upstairs. And that's what it felt like. And the art show, of course, was all of us fighting to the death, but it was treated like an art. It wasn't treated like a sport. I can't say for sure that it was even the fact that it was free or the people that were there. I don't know for sure why it felt that way, but it did. And it was a really cool feeling. And it's just the first time they've done an event like this. And I had the opportunity to be the main event with Cody Kellison. If you guys don't know Cody, he has been on the podcast before. And I don't remember off the top of my head what episode number he is, so I'll just make sure to link it in the description, his episode. But we talked a little bit about mental health. If that was something that struck a chord with you, absolutely listen to Cody's interview on the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. Also, Cody and I are going to do another interview together eventually, and probably within the next month or something like that. And we're going to break down our match for you guys. So I won't give you the total play-by-play, but I was able to go out and grapple hard. And Cody too. We really did. It was a 6-minute match, and the only way to score points was by deep submission, one that your opponent had to defend. And we ended up 0-0. Neither of us had anything deep, but the amount of attempts from both of us was excessively high. The pace of the match was excessively high. And so it's a very fun match. There's a place online for you to watch the event. You can rewatch the entire event. It's like an hour and 20 minutes, and the event really was awesome. But you guys can do that if you search Strange Hands. I think Strange Hands BJJ. I know if you search Strange Hands Imposed Will, that it definitely pops up on YouTube. But yeah, this whole event. And then I think they're also breaking the matches down and posting them individually as we speak. And so if that ever happens, I'll just put that our match in the comment or in the description of this episode. But anyway, we didn't talk about, I just wanted to kind of go with, oh, that's why I brought this up. I was talking about how people were treating me weird. For me, like people were coming up at this show and saying like, oh yeah, I listened to the podcast. I'm a huge fan of you, Josh. Like, why would you be a huge fan of me? That's bizarre, dude. You need to say you should choose your heroes better. And, but it was weird, but it also could easily have been intoxicating. It could have easily been, oh, I am better than I actually am. I am more relevant than I actually am, right? I can see how people fall for that so easily, right? But I think what was helpful for me was having dealt with people that have already been successful and getting to follow the method that they use, but then also avoid the pitfalls that they're dealing with and that they struggle with. I was thinking about it today because I was just thinking about different mentors that don't do jujitsu and things like that. I have 2 friends I was thinking about today that I actually watched make millions of dollars. And it wasn't like an accident. These are 2 guys that both called their shot and said, both times actually, they said something along the lines of this year is going to be the year. This is going to be when I blow up. And both of them did it. It was different years, but both of them did it. And one thing that I could say to you is, first, they already had momentum. Neither guy did it from a dead stop. They didn't have the money that they were wanting to make, but they had the knowledge, they had the consistency, they had the routine. And then with the routine, they started to see little things and they started to say, hey, if I did this, a lot of times, if I did this to my routine, if I traveled one more day a month, I would be more successful. And they started to implement it. But it came from knowing their business really well, knowing themselves really well, and knowing their routine really well. But they also dealt with certain things that were really, really tough. They both dealt with, you're doing something like that, making a bunch of money, both dealt with employee issues. It's really hard to get new employees. It's really hard to find the right employees, right? And so what I could start to do, if my goal was to make all this money in my gym, I could start to hire employees before I absolutely needed them, because the vision was there. The vision is, okay, I'm going to be here in, I don't know, quarter one or quarter two of 2023. I'm going to be here. I need to have people ready to go if I'm going to be here in 2023 quarter two, because by quarter three, if I don't have those people, I'm going to end up taking a step back, right? But it's because I had the right guys around me that I got to watch. And so, kind of my last thing when it comes to being consistent is create a routine. I know we talked about that in the emotion, but John Maxwell has a great quote. It's the secret to your success is in your daily routine. And I notice I will tell you, I feel like I have been a product of this more and more as kind of I've grown up a little bit. My dad is, people will come up to me and say, I don't know how your dad does it. He is the most routine person I've ever met in my life. And he is. And what I used to do is I used to be like, I'm going to be like him and I'm going to follow his routine. And what would happen is I would deal with that emotion. I would start, it would last for a little bit, and then I would crash. Now I go, man, there are all these great things. This guy is great at routine. He's my routine mentor. On Monday morning, me and Cody had a war. I guess I didn't say this, but I won a split decision. And, you guys can make the call yourself. I thought it was a really close match too. I thought it was, obviously it could have went either way. But yeah, you guys can watch that match and make the decision. But what I was kind of saying about that is that afterwards, I was beat up. I was really exhausted. I woke up Monday morning. The emotional high from that event, there were like, I don't know how many people were there, but there was no space between like the mat and where people were. It literally felt like on the mat that my 100 closest friends were there leaning over the mat yelling at me while I was competing. And so the emotion was super high. And then, of course, that means the crash was super low. And I was super exhausted. Sleep on Sunday night. I actually struggled to sleep on Sunday night just from that emotional high. And wake up Monday morning and don't feel like following my routine. And I get a text at 7:15, and it's my dad saying, hey, you're here at 8:45, right? Well, Dad, I guess I am. And that's my first lift. That's the lift that I make sure to hit, is my Monday morning lift. And it's because I had a good routine mentor there. I had somebody who pushed me, because I guarantee you, had he have not sent that text message, I'm not going. I'm staying home that day. Normally he doesn't need to, but he also knew like, okay, this guy's going to be beat up. He's going to be exhausted. But guess what? He competes next weekend too. There's no rest for the wicked, right back to the routine. And so I guess why consistent, we gave 3 points as to why consistency was impossible, or felt impossible, which were your emotion. It's just hard to get started. Your emotion, which is that voice a lot of times for us inside our head that beats us down. And then lastly, that we're just changing, and we have to look at that, especially once our routine is going. We're going to change, and a routine is going to need to change with it. And so looking ahead, looking for people that are where you want to be, and let them mentor you, let them help you out, ask them about places to grow and pitfalls to avoid. And so I think that's all I have for you guys today. I hope this episode helps you guys. Oh, wait, it's not the end. I didn't even do the closing. Shoot. Never mind. We'll just go take it away, Josh, and close us out. And that is the episode. Thank you guys for checking this one out. Hope you guys like this one. Hopefully this is helpful for you guys. But don't forget, it starts with those first few steps. So if you're struggling with consistency, don't forget the first thing we talked about is an easy goal and taking one step, and one foot behind the other, then your next easy goal and your next. Don't forget to give yourself rewards. Don't forget to treat yourself kindly. And so that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I think I will be getting back to a few interviews pretty soon. I said I would never do another not in-person podcast, but that's not 100% true. I'm going to do a few before the end of the year, and then we will end this year probably with never doing another not in-person podcast again. So be on the lookout for those. Make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, all those, commenting, I don't know, all those things you're supposed to be doing. Whatever, you guys know more about social media and stuff like that than I do. So just, you guys keep doing your stuff. I'll keep doing mine. All right. And yeah, I hope this episode was fun for you guys. Hope you enjoyed it. And I hope that this episode helps you guys suck just a little bit less at jiu-jitsu. Have a great day, guys.